Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Full Quota podcast. This is the start of the second season. It's our second episode. Our first episode was yesterday. We spoke with Dane Patterson, and we promised you that that we would be coming back to discuss all things that are happening in relation to the CSA arbitration case with regards to Mark Boucher, and also touch on the Graham Smith one that kind of he was found not guilty. But I've got Tim here to discuss it. Tim, are you ready to give me your views on what came down on Tuesday? Was it
I'm
Monday?
ready to. I'm ready
Was it
and
Tuesday?
firing.
Oh, it was
Today,
yesterday. Sorry.
yeah, just today.
Yes,
Today's
it felt
Wednesday.
like 2 days away because it's such important news. Tim, I think let's start with this. I think let's start with your thoughts around when you got the message that Mark Boucher was um, cleared, he was free. He was I don't know. Well, let me not use the term free because he wasn't in a jail or a prison, but he was clear of the allegations. All of the allegations, by the way, it wasn't just one. How did you feel, and we'll unpack it from there.
Well, I think I definitely said in the previous podcast during season one, I said that Smith and Boucher would be clear. It was never in doubt, in my opinion, uh, particularly the accusations of racism were at best rather flimsy. Um, so for me, it was never a case of whether they were going to be found guilty or innocent. It was whether the waters were going to be even more muddy after the whole case. Were they going to go into a proper hearing? Was there going to be cross examination with Paul Adams, with Enoch and Quay? So that didn't surprise me that they were found innocent. It did a little bit surprise me that there wasn't some sort of case that Cricket South Africa had against Mark Boucher, as in even with the withdrawals of Enoch and Paul, they are. It's clear that there are certain members who don't like him, and that's fairly obvious. So I'm a bit surprised that that part didn't at least go through. Um, but for the better of Cricket South Africa, it's probably a good thing that it didn't. Um,
Mm.
so the muddied waters are not as muddy as they could have been. With no fights, as we have lots of fights with Cricket South Africa in the last couple of years, um, and it's good that it's come to some kind of um, finalization. Uh,
Mm.
I do think it was necessary. I do think, particularly uh, the case against Boucher from Enoch and Quay, there were definite questions around that, legitimate questions
Mm.
that Enoch Quay, with the toxic environment. Um, we've seen that there have been elements of that being coming through. So uh, it's good that it happened. I'm not one of those people that thinks it's not good that that happened. I think it's good that we've had it. It's good that we had the discussions. And I think Enoch and Quay and Paul Adams handled the situation well. They said it's not about them versus Boucher or Smith. It's about Cricket South Africa against Smith and Boucher. It's
Mm.
about coming to a finalization, coming to an agreement, and moving forward. Cricket South Africa has to start moving forward because it's not just been this, it's been the last 2, 3, 4 years where there's been
Mm.
a lot of off-field situations which haven't helped at all. Um, so the positives are it's come to come to a finalization. You're not going to win the Twitter war. So there are still
Mm.
going to be elements that are very unhappy with the situation, and you're going to get elements on the other side
Mm.
fighting on Twitter. But that's a separate thing. Um, that is what it is. Uh, as I said before, it's good that we had the SGN hearings. I hear a lot of elements saying it's a waste of money. It wasn't. It wasn't a waste of money. It was important to get stories across and from what happened in the past, because those stories needed to be told. It's all right for you and I to know that those stories did exist, but for the wider public, it's certainly very important. So, but I just hope that we can move forward now in a positive direction. Now that both cases are now from both sides considered closed.
Look, the surprise for me was Mark saying that he wanted to continue. I thought even if he would be cleared, he would walk away because of that element that you said of there are people and you can see, and it feels like it's a majority of the board because they came up with these charges that want him out. So that's where I was. But I kind of feel, and I disagree with you, I think South African cricket is even more polarized after this, largely because of largely because I think what happened in this process post SJN and throughout the SJN, it felt like it was cutting South African cricket into two camps. And yes, there'll be people in the middle, and I think a lot of us are in the middle, but there are those who are sitting there going, we are victims, and we've been victims a lot longer. And it goes into the wider public because of the nature that South Africa is. South Africa is split along racial lines. And so you find yourself in a situation where this is just going to exacerbate it because this case wasn't fully heard. This case wasn't fully, it didn't reach its the finality that everybody wanted. I think for me, I spoke about this in season 1. I thought this was a reach for Mark to get. So there were two things. The Enoch one I thought had legs, but it needed Enoch to testify, right? And it's like when you're at work and you have a complaint against a boss or a coworker, in the arbitration hearings at your office that aren't public, like it's happening at CSA, in those arbitration hearings, you will be required to testify and state your case, and there'll be other witnesses that'll be coming through, right? And the problem about this position was that it would be that, and that's they made that into CSA versus Mark Boucher instead of just a quick disciplinary hearing to be like, look, Mark, these are the allegations. This is what it was. It turned into a massive media circus, and I think from a victim's perspective, and you see that in courts around the world, especially in abuse situations where the victim will then pull out because of the media scrutiny and having to relive and relitigate and information. I'm assuming Enoch thought what I told you was to give you evidence, well, the written evidence, for you to be able to do it however you way want, but I don't want to be involved again. Because if you look at it from Enoch's eyes, it would feel like he wants Boucher out so he can take his job. And we saw that going on in the media that no, they're looking to, CSA is looking at a backup plan should Boucher be found guilty. And that backup plan was Enoch. And I get where Enoch comes from. And I think for me, that without Enoch, that Enoch case, even though I think has merits, more than the Paul Adams one, kind of falls flat because the person who needs to do it is a victim in all of this because he's experienced all this hurt, but now you ask him to do it again, and it's in the media, it's in the public eye. It's not like me and you and our little day-to-day jobs where we could do it in a company. Nobody even in the company would know. It would just be you, whoever the arbitrator is, some of the key members, key senior people in the company, and maybe some of the witnesses that may have been a witness to it. But it effectively becomes a he said, she said, and that's what all these hearings became. He said, she said. The Graham Smith one became that. The Mark Boucher one would have become that. And nobody wins in a he said, she said. Actually, the victim loses more in that case because there is no concrete evidence. And for me, when it comes to the whole racism thing, right, it's a harder hill, a tougher hill to climb and prove if Mark for somebody to be racist. And I don't like using the word racist because I don't believe people can be racist unless if you are literally you don't want to see black people. So for me, I knew there are some racist acts, and what they called Paul Adams was a racist act. And when I look at that, I kind of feel like when they said whether Mark was racist or not, the charge sheet was he's being charged because his apology was not adequate enough for CSA, for a person who worked at CSA, and in that it brought the organization into disrepute. It was, and it kind of felt like somewhere along the way, social media and the media took it into a realm of it's racist, right? He apologized for his acts in that first affidavit, but CSA felt that the apology was inadequate and unfeeling. And I would have loved to see that being litigated through the whole structures of the courts to see how that was gonna go. But it did feel like there was a bit of a reach, and it felt like CSA would have had a larger case to prove. Tim's probably going to go off right now. He's just having some connection issues. We'll get back to that. And so just to conclude my point while we wait for Tim to come back. And so I kind of felt that with CSA doing all of this, that it was a situation where they were in a lose-lose, largely because it's going to be hard to prove that, and especially without the witnesses. And that's where this case fell off. This case fell because because they ran out of witnesses, and it's kind of sad. But let me go on to the SJN, because I think that's what kind of fueled this thing, right? There's nothing wrong with the SJN, and I hope if people get that the SJN was flawed out of this, I understand that, because it looks like that, but it wasn't. And I'm just surprised that they made an error like that, and they misquoted Paul Adams like that, because the assistant advocate asked Paul whether Mark Boucher was there. Paul never said Mark Boucher was there. Paul just confirmed that Mark Boucher was in the side, that were calling him all of these things. And I understand where the advocate was coming from, largely because of the fact that Mark is an employee of CSA, and that's where CSA came in. So now the question was, and we all know cricket in South Africa has always had agendas, and this was just an agenda to try and get Mark out. And the question was, CSA, why did you decide to go and litigate Mark? Kind of felt like they knew that the race thing was a little bit weak, but they needed something else, and the Enoch thing was the smoking gun, and I think that's what they wanted. And with Enoch falling away, it kind of felt like now it became an employment dispute rather than something egregious with racism. And it's not racism. It was never racism. It was just the inadequate ability for Mark to respond in a manner that CSA wanted, and it put CSA in disrepute because people think that Mark's a racist, when nowhere in the SJN report did they call Mark a racist. Nowhere in the SJN hearings did anybody called Mark a racist. It was just, this was the word that was said. And yes, the thing about it, you start on day one at the arbitration. Mark, did you say it? He'll say, yes, I did. I wrote it in my affidavit. So then where do we go from there? Does it mean that Mark's a racist? Well, he's not. It's been 20 years. And so I don't want to fall into the it was 20 years ago argument, because I think that's a cop-out. But he's acknowledged that he said it in his affidavit and in subsequent statements. And his thing, and the reason why he's standing there is the fact that nobody could teach him how to apologize properly. And this is another point that I said in season one. You can't apologize with conditions. So you can't say, I apologize if any offense has been caused. I apologize for causing any offense. That's not the line, because it feels like if you weren't intending to cause an offense, you're not going to apologize. But you were. You caused an offense. A hurt occurred. So apologize for the hurt. So say that, Paul, I know you are hurt. I know the statements that I said hurt you, and I apologize. This was all that was needed. So for me, that was it. My big question, Tim, now is, what does this mean for the SJN? What does this mean for CSA going forward? Because I feel as though this thing with Mark is not going to end right here. I think, yes, they'll continue, but I do believe it's now a situation where the board is literally waiting for Mark to make a mistake. And the other big issue was, and I was uncomfortable about all of this, was they needed the players to testify. That's a no-no. That is a no-no, because in the eyes of the public, in the eyes, they will be seen as pro-Mark, anti-Mark. And depending on how the world sees them, it could have career ramifications. They could lose IPL contracts. They could lose money-making opportunities just because of where they were sitting on the line. Because the world we live in was divided along, are you for Mark or are you against Mark? Yeah, so where do you think this takes the SJN situation, and where do you think CSA goes from here?
So the SCN situation is still relevant. There were lots of stories in that SGN in that SGN hearings about how Cricket South Africa is not doing enough at the grassroots, particular. So there is already of all the implementations that they came up with, there was a lot in there that said, you know what, you need to do more, build more grounds, build more pitches, get more players of colour playing at the grassroots level, go into the townships. You know, there's plenty that cricket. I'm not saying they don't do it. I'm saying they don't do it enough. I'm saying there's not enough that's going in, not enough. So there's plenty for them to go into and to work on those particular areas that were previously disadvantaged. I was a little bit too positive in my analysis going forward. I fully admit.
You were, but we all were. I was like, this is good. This is what we need. Outside of the hearings, it was just okay. And even because my big issue here, Tim, was a lot of the white players, former players, white cricket administrators, white people in cricket didn't come forward to the SJN. And that was a disappointment for me. And it kind of spoke to, similar to the TRC, it kind of feels like when in South Africa, when it comes to this whole reconciliation project, Black people are always at the forefront, always willing to come forward, always wanting to come forward. But because, and the thing about the SJN, it wasn't a hearing, but maybe that's what should have been appeasing people. It was just a situation where if you came forward and you admitted to your wrongs or whatever you did, we'd move away from it because it happened so long ago. We would just wanted you to come forward and admit. And which is why I respected Jacques Faul for what he did, because he admitted the fact that he felt like they were whitewashing cricket. And so for me, I wanted more of that. And the issue with all of this, and we'll go on to your point, is that it leaves me with a lot less closure. For instance, the development argument, right? It's all been put at the hands of CSA. Somebody needed to come and say, actually, we thought because you guys were all Black, you knew what Black people needed. And so we let you guys do what you needed to do. And we didn't want to get involved because there's a little bit of an apathy when it comes to development from right sectors in South Africa around that. Like I've said on this show, we need former white players to go into the townships. They know how this game, it's not Makaya, it's not Funeko Mgam, it's not Monde Zondeki, it's white players. But we needed those guys to come through. But as you saw, and this is the one thing that I know SJN spoke about, Johan Louw's message about the ape, that he said, no, it was out of context, that SJN rightfully said, no, that's racist. It kind of gives an inkling as to the way they see the game of cricket. Not all of them, some of them. And we needed to hear more of that, how they're feeling. Are we taking the game away from them? Is the transformation system hurting their chances, their children's chances? Do they understand it? Do they not? Do they want it out? Do they want it? Because it was just Black players saying transformation has hurt me because people see me as a whatever it is. But we never got it from the other side. And that was the disappointing thing, because had we got it from the other side, we could move forward. Because right now, all of these things are still there. And we're all sitting there. We just know that the Black people came forward and they spoke. And then now we're sitting there going, okay, all it ended up was because, and we're all in this mess largely because Mark and Graham chose not to come to SJN. If Mark and Graham came to the SJN, we wouldn't have had this. We wouldn't have had these hearings. We probably would have had maybe some disciplinary things, because there were a lot of procedural things that Graham did not get right. And largely it was based from the back, the board was interim, and there were so many things going wrong, and you kind of like he had a lot of the powers. And it was funny because I kind of feel like and you kind of can hear that. But with Mark, that was the other thing. It's like if they both came forward, would have walked away, would have had closure, would have been like, okay, let's leave this chapter behind 6 months ago. But we're here today. We're here to learn. So that's where I think we find ourselves, Tim. Yeah.
I'm just going to go on the relationship part.
Mm.
The reason why we are left where we are is because of Mark Boucher's character. Mark Boucher is a guy that keeps within himself, keeps his close friends close, and everybody else very far apart.
Mm.
That is part why he didn't come forward. That is in part why his first apology was not sincere enough. That is in part why he got into this kind of situation with Enoch and Quay. It's not that he's a bad person, it's his character. He keeps himself in a cocoon with his small group of friends. I mean, everybody knows this, and that's it. He's a fighter. So my analysis was like yours. I thought he would resign. I thought he would be clear and say thanks, but I've had enough. It's his character to keep fighting. It's his character to keep going on until he sees it as being over. He wants to go out on his own terms. Going forward, the relationship between him and Cricket South Africa is going to be very, very interesting. It can't be said that it's a good relationship at the moment. It's a relationship that is rocky at best. There seems to be a good relationship between him and Museki, the CEO.
Yes.
It does seem to be a good relationship there, but with the board, certain elements there. So going forward, it's going to be game by game basis, series by series basis. There are going to be elements in there going, this 18 months can't happen quick enough. Because hypothetically, we get knocked out in the quarterfinal of the World Cup, boom, sack him. That's a perfect vacuum. And they get what they want. If he wins it, then it creates a whole new section. But I agree. I just hope on the field it moves in the right direction. I hope that the players now feel that they can put themselves in a position where they can give it their all, not have the outside distractions. And we can keep that to a minimum. If we don't, it could be a problem for mathematics for the players, and it could, yes, I think you're right, there could be more things coming up between the board and Boucher. Touch wood not, but I think that it's highly possible.
I think the only thing would need the players to be like, actually, we don't want this guy. He's treating us badly, similar to Bafana 98 with Philippe Troussier, with Kamstaldrad, all that other vibes that have happened always. And I don't think that's going to happen, but the power plays are still there. And I just feel as though everybody's lost. No one's won. I think Mark may feel like he's won, but I think in hindsight, he may feel like he's lost, because I think losing that up, not necessarily fully taking in what was being said, and going through and being able to not feel defensive, because and understand, and this is why I think it's so important to read statements, to go and find the initial evidence. Because had he watched that clip, had he gone and watched that entire interview, not the entire one, but that 3-minute clip that Paul Adams put out there, he would have known that it wasn't Paul who said it. That,
he never
oh
said his
no,
name.
yes.
He
He
never
just said
his
yes,
name.
Boucher was part of the team, and they were part of the guys who called me, because that's what it was. And had he taken a step back, and I think this is a lesson, I think, in racial relations in South Africa. Let's take the R word out. If you want progress, take the R word off the table, right? Just because the moment you put the R word in, everyone's defensive. Everyone's like, oh no, I'm not a racist, I've got black friends. Same thing with the whole Graham Smith racist thing. Like I said, I think in one of the episodes in season 1, You can be racist and racially inclined and hate black people, but there'll be a few black people that you accommodate and you like. Doesn't mean because you've got those few black people that you don't hate everybody else. You may still harbor those, but that's between you and your God. It has nothing to do with the rest of us, right? But the thing for me is when hurts have occurred to other people and you're being accused, maybe do take a step back. I know there's a lot at stake, and maybe even when I'm accused of something along the line, I do this as well. But maybe it's a time to stop being defensive, listen to what was said, and then look to respond appropriately and not necessarily pouring petrol onto the fire. And that's effectively what Mark's apology was. Mark was, no, but I was part of the team. CSA were the ones who didn't teach us. No, you're an adult. You're 21 years old. You actually, when you joined the team, was over 21. So you know the context of the country. You can't be excused for being, oh no, as part of the team. It's the same thing with Cameron Bancroft. Cameron Bancroft didn't get off scot-free because he was like, David Warner told me to do it. He also got punished, and I think he got punished the most out of all of them. And where is he now? And largely because, no, I gave my agency to somebody else. And so we can no longer hide behind. And the same thing with Ollie Robinson. The whole thing, I was young. No. Being young doesn't work. It's ignored. And so for me is when you apologize, just say, I know that at the time when I said these things, I was under whatever influence you were under. However, I've come to realize that they are wrong. And that's what he said in his statement. His statement yesterday was perfect. He now acknowledges that what he said in the context of that team was wrong. Own up to it and understand that a hurt was occurred, which you said. And you even said, I am sorry to Paul for the hurt that I caused you. 100%. And half the time, sometimes you don't even know what you did, but somebody is hurt. So let's start with that. Let's lead with kindness and love rather than, oh no, I'm a victim. How's this going to make me look? Apologies have made people look very nice. A very sincere apology made people look very nice in life. And so that's where I think we should all go, especially with this relationship being with him and CSA. I think the one way to repair it is to let bygones be bygones. Whatever's happened, yes, there'll be a little bit of animosity, but we need to lead with kindness, lead with love, lead with the interests of cricketers in mind. And that's the fundamental thing. And right now, whether you like it or not, Mark has put the South African cricket team in a position that we haven't been in a while. I think the last time we were in a position like this was probably before the 2015 World Cup, where you're staring a World Cup in the face. Yes, forget about the Super League. Like, that still needs to be dealt with. But from a test situation, this team is pumping similar to the teams of the 2010s, the early decade teams of the last decade, and probably even the early part of Faf du Plessis' reign as captain, even with a team that doesn't have the same amount of talent that all those teams have had. And so he's doing something right. So maybe now let's allow him to do things right. Yes, we can critique game by game. You're going to have me throughout this shouting at Mark or being angry at Mark at whatever he's done. But we need to give him a situation where he can work. So he mustn't work with him looking over his shoulder all the time, knowing that one thing could trigger, there could be something. But knowing South African cricket, for the 5 years that I've been a part of it, something's on the horizon, something's going to happen, because South African cricket's just in two camps. It's the black people and it's those who are not black on the other side. And it's a fight, and it's a fight for power, and that fight for power ekes his way onto the field. And that's what's happened over the past 5 years. And we thought SJN could be that bridge that kind of connects both sides, so we could see the white experience, the white people could see the black experience, because fundamentally we're in a country that's majority black, but cricket is a sport that's a largely white space. And I think that's the bridge that needs to be dealt with. And people keep on saying, no, go to grassroots. When our players who are developed come through the system, look at Lesiba Mwepe. Lesiba Mwepe is 2 years younger than me, which means he lived in post-democratic South Africa, which means he's grown into the system. Yet Lesiba's 29 years old. Lesiba wouldn't be where he's at if it wasn't for the transformation system. In as much as you're saying no, guys are some black players are mediocre, come from the quota system. That's what it was. Had we not had the quota system, wouldn't have seen Lesiba Mwepe's 100 against Zimbabwe. We wouldn't have seen Reza Hendricks' 100 against Zimbabwe, because in all else, the way the system was set up before, only exceptional black people made it through. But average white people made it through. And some of them still make it through today. But now the system is saying, no, let's give everybody a fair shake, a little bit of average here, average there. Yes, we want exceptional, but it may take time for those people to come through the system and be great. And Lesiba Mwepe is an example. He's at 29 years old, or 30, and he's entering into his prime. And that is a function of people forcing decision makers to make a decision and look at black players. And so for me, that's something that I wanted fleshed out a lot more in the SJN. But from the white side, how do white people feel about it? I don't know how white people feel about Quota. I know they hate it, but why do they hate it?
I will tell you, just in my very small opinion, because otherwise I'll go on for hours. I think it's a good thing. I think it's necessary. I don't think it needs to be quite as severe as it is at the moment, because people like Nkope are coming through now. So I don't think it needs to be quite as strict as it is at the moment.
So here's an idea. Here's a thought, right?
I understand that if that happens, there are going to be teams that are going to abuse that. I understand that.
Yes.
I still think we don't need to be as severe.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think we're at the diametrically with the transformation system. I think we're at the far end of its severity, and it needs to come back a little bit. But here's a thought, right? Remember when we interviewed Robbie P? I think it was off air or was on air, I don't know, but maybe you can go back and watch the Robbie P interview we did last year. I asked him what the decision was to push Mwepe up the order in that CSAT 20, whatever it was. And he was like, no, he believes in him, he backs him, and he wants him to come through. We forget that, Lesiba Mwepe before then was, and it's not a Lesiba Mwepe podcast, it's just he's an example. He's a great cricketer.
It's an example.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just that the season before, and before then, he hadn't necessarily put the runs down because he was batting at 6 or 7. He wasn't doing that well. And I commended Robbie for doing that, because you're giving a black player an opportunity to be able to play to be able to showcase his skills in a much better environment. Because what normally happens with the quota system or the transformation system is that you allowed one black batter in the top 6. That black batter will bat at 6, and he's probably a fast bowling all-rounder, and he'll bat at 6 at the max end. Whereas in this case, and that's where Lesiba was batting a lot of times before Robbie actually pushed him up the order and made him a middle order batter. And remember when everyone was complaining, why was he been batting why wasn't he batting at 6 the day he opened the batting with Reza? And I said, well, I didn't respond. I said, but Lesiba's batted at 4 in his franchise. He's batted at 3 before. He's done well there. So it was just some of those things like, if we didn't have that, Lesiba's career would have probably gone in the ether. If let's say we didn't have any transformation targets, because he hadn't actually blown the lights out like all these other kids who come out of an under 19 and they're great and they're beautiful and they're amazing. And so it's just one of those things for our listeners and our viewers to just mull over. Tim, I want to move on to quickly to get your thoughts, as I don't know who's at the door, but
don't worry.
Cool.
No.
I think it's next door. So we were done with Mark Boucher. Congratulations. I hope you can last until the 2018 World Cup. Win us the World Cup in 2023, please. Like, honestly, now we're at that point in time. But I will criticize you for your tactics once in a while, because that's what it is. SAA, Zimbabwe 11. How have you found that series?
It's a good series. I think it's good that South African guys are getting a chance. I thought the Zimbabweans as a whole, considering that their A team were in Nepal, were quite competitive in the majority of the games. Yes, okay, there were some big batting collapses, but also they brought us out for 73 in the second last game of the series. So it was competitive. My worry, this is slight worry. My slight worry is the big guys that came through were Reza Hendricks and
Tim, I think
Heinrich
I'm losing
Klaassen.
you a little bit there. But
Okay,
I
have you
lost
got
you a
me?
little bit there. Can you just repeat your answer? I've got you
Okay,
now. I've got you clear.
okay,
Just repeat your
uh,
answer.
okay. So good series, a competitive opposition, even though they did have some batting collapses. They also bowled us out for 73, remember? So they bowled us out for cheaply
Yes.
in the game. I think it was a good ding-dong battle throughout the series. My concern, though, is that a series, I want guys that are coming through to go through to the Proteas. That's where its function is. It is the next best 11. My worry is, particularly from the batting point of view, the guys that did well are Reza Hendricks and Heinrich Klaassen. Good cricketers, fantastic cricketers at domestic level, haven't cracked it at internationals. So are they now going to say, right, Klaassen and Reza, you've done your business, your numbers mean you come into the Proteas white ball side? I wouldn't be doing that. But on their numbers, you have to. On their numbers alone, you have to go and give Reza and Klaassen another shot. They've had several shots at Proteas,
Already.
and
Yes.
they haven't done badly. I'm not saying that. They've done okay. They've done okay. But okay gets us to a semi-final. Okay gets us just short of winning something. We want to be more than okay. The bowlers, Lazard Williams, the pick of the bowlers across both formats by some distance. I'm really, really impressed with him. I really think he is the next of the lot, and I would be
Yes.
very comfortable with him in the next Proteas T20 or ODI side, particularly T20s. Very comfortable. I have no problems with that. Same with Bjorn Fortuyn as well.
The Iceman.
Getting wickets early on, which suffocated the Zimbabwean teams again and again throughout that series. The Coetzee, Jordalas, and Dupavillion. Let's focus on the Coetzee and Dupavillion in particular, because those are the guys that are, in theory, next in line. A little bit inconsistent. They did what they did throughout the series domestically. A good game here, 3 bad games. A good game here, 3 bad games. Not consistent enough. So, as much as that four for not much for Coetzee the last game is good, fantastic. Didn't do the business on a consistent enough basis, and he had plenty games in this series to make a name for himself. So as I say, batting.
Is it worrying? Is it worrying that Gerald spent all this time under Alan Donald, but his development hasn't actually gone forward?
Yes. Yeah. Very, 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 very much a concern.
Even with Miguel Pretorius.
Even with Miguel Pretorius, both of them have not. They've not gone forward in their careers. They've stalled. They haven't progressed in anything like the rate that I thought they could. Look, Michael, Coetzee is a younger man. Coetzee is much younger. He's 21, I think, 21, 22. So he's young and he's got a couple of years to really find his game. So there's time on his side. There isn't that much time for Michael. Michael is in that boat now where he's in the IPL and he's probably thinking, I'm probably not going to play for South Africa because of Ngidi, Rabada, Nokia, Olafia, Zard Williams, Marco. So that's 6. I'm probably not going to play unless 3 of them are injured. I'm going to the IPL. The CPL likes me. You know what? I'm happy to play for the Knights Free State. I'll use that as my pre-season, and I'll go and I'll play my IPLs and my CPLs, and I'll make good
and
money.
this new South African T20 tournament.
He's probably in that boat now. He's probably thinking along those lines, and I wouldn't fault him. But it is disappointing and sad to see his his career stall a little bit, shall we say? And the Knights have not bought that well going into the next season, so I'm a bit worried for the both of them.
They're my sneaky early season candidate for them to get relegated, by the way. So I love the Zimbabwe series. I think Reza struggled throughout that 51-day cup, but then he found form in that final, and he found it really, really well. You have to, in the 50-over game, give Reza a chance and Hanoch another chance, largely because of the the indifferent performances coming out of David Miller, maybe even Calvarena not necessarily being settled in the side. That ODI side looks a little wonky, the batting lineup. And obviously, Aiden, the argument when you said, like, we've given them so many chances, the argument to Aiden Mark Aiden in 50-over cricket is not that great, guys. Like, he isn't that great. And so, but we keep picking him. And then Reza and Heinrich will be like, but Oaks, like, but in their defense, when Aiden played for the Titans in the One Day Cup, he scored a lot of runs. So got a lot of guys who are punching their weight above their weight in domestic, and Tennis de Bruin is one of them. But at international level, across the different formats, then they're not cutting it well. And so it's one of those situations where I think the selectors have a bit of a headache, because when domestic performance should reflect your international. And also, the other thing is everyone's going to be like, quality of opposition. The Zimbabwe side was actually pretty good.
It's pretty good.
And so for me, my answer out of that whole thing was maybe look at Lesiba Mwempe as an option. Give him a chance in the T20s, see what he can give you. I know the T20 side is a lot more settled, largely because you've got like 6 openers batting in 1 to 6, but that's how it is.
Which is why I was one of those people that said, why is he opening? Not because he doesn't talented. How is he going to get ahead of the guys that are there?
But the other thing is that a lot of those guys who are in the 1 to 4 spots for the Proteas batted higher up the order for their franchises in order for them to get that opportunity. It's funny because everyone's like, we don't have finishers. Well, it feels as though we're selecting people based on weight of runs, not necessarily the type of runs that were being scored. So the 25s of the 17s are not as lauded as the 60s, 70s, and the 100s. And so that's why you get a team like South Africa that looks really unbalanced, largely because the openers will bat throughout the innings. And I loved it because it gave Lesiba the opportunity in the shop window to showcase his skills. What the selectors make of it, they make of it. My answer is, whatever ODI series you have, throw him in there. Let's see. Because we know he can bat lower down the order. So the situation is, okay, fine. If you throw him in there, what's going to happen? But I know everyone wants Devil Brevis, everyone wants Tristan Stubbs, so it's fine. It's okay. That's my thought.
Patience on both those guys. Come on, guys. Come on.
No, guys, everyone's let me tell you, you're playing ODIs in India before we go to England, right? The first thing everyone's going to be saying, and true to form, this one is going to be, where's Devil Brevis? The second one would be, where's Tristan Stubbs? And then they'll see Reza Hendricks carrying drinks. Then they're going to be like, Brevis is better than this guy, which is a fallacy. It's a lie. Then they're going to see Heino Klaassen running, carrying drinks. They're going to be like, no, but Cal should be playing there. So we'll never win with people. But I just want guys to get opportunities. There's a lot of T20s to be played until the World Cup later this year. Give guys a chance. Lesiba's a chance. Similar to how Aiden got his chance because Reza's daughter was being born. You never know. You just never know. Last thing, Mzansi Super League's now going to be something else. I don't know. I say still keep the name, but I know they won't because of the connotations. We've gone back to Global T20, to Harun Logat. This is Global T20 2.0, Tim. I just want to see if there'll be a team in Benoni because they painted a stadium yellow because the Benoni Zalmi were going to be yellow, similar to the other team in the PSL that's named the Zalmi. They also wear yellow. So, yeah, I'm not happy. I'm like, folks, the only difference now is Super Sports is shareholder. Everything else is the same.
Exactly. No, I'm not happy, and I said it. Look, money talks. Cricket South Africa needs money, and money talks. It is that simple. For me, what makes the best T20 competitions is that they are unique to each country. They have a flavor to each country. So you've got the PSL that is unique. If you came down to earth from Mars and you watch the PSL, it looks like a Pakistan cricket tournament. You went to the T20 Blast, it looks like an English tournament. If you went to the IPL, it is undoubtedly an Indian tournament. You go to the R1, it's just going to be a mini IPL. And no, I liked the Mzansi Super League. I liked the local feel to it. I liked what Paul Rocks was doing. I liked what Josie Stars was doing. It had a particularly South African aspect to it. I get all the problems with it and the lack of money. I get that. I do think, I just wish that there was another way. I really do. Another way where you could have some games on SCBC, not all.
Yes.
Some games on SCBC. Super Sports have their pie. That's fine. Super Sports do great stuff with our sport. And it's absolutely fine. Cricket South Africa are the majority shareholder. That's fine. But keep the teams within us. Keep the teams
the
within
community.
Our borders. You know,
yes.
That's appealed to me. That's what appealed to me. I don't have an interest in the IPL. I've said this many times before. I had an interest. I've completely lost interest. I know that I'm not in the norm. I know that, and I accept that. But that's me. I like T20 competitions that are. I don't watch. So the two T20 competitions that have expanded in the recent years, I don't watch. The BBL and IPL. I'm not interested. I've completely lost interest in both of them.
Is it because they expanded, or is it because it feels like it's now just it's a show?
Well, the IPL has always been a show. It's always been. 2008, it's always been a show. And I liked the new thing. I liked the new aspect. 5-6 years. Then it lost its appeal with the expansion of teams, with the more matches. It lost its gloss, if you like. Same with the BBL. BBL was good. It was a good tournament. Then it went and expanded. It said, well, we're going to make more money with more teams, playing more grounds. It played on out grounds. The out grounds were really, really average. I mean, guys were struggling to make big scores. It wasn't conducive to T20 cricket. So I completely lost interest. My interests now are the smaller ones. I accept that. That's what appeals to me. And I do think if we go the way that we're going, not nothing's confirmed, but if we go that we're going, something's going to be lost. Something was uniquely South African is going to be lost. But that's just my point.
Well, look, in their defense, the Caribbean Premier League has owners from the IPL. So too, that's the only other league that I know that has owners from the IPL. But they need the money. My problem is to reach to millions more. I think one thing that Tabam Moroe, even though you don't like him, wanted was cricket to be a game for everybody, and so it be accessible to everyone. Not everyone has DSTV. It's like small set of South Africans, like 60 million South Africans. I think less than 2 million people watch cricket on SuperSport. 10 million people watch cricket on SABC. It's a massive gap, and you lose that market. And yes, I know those numbers were like a couple of years ago, but it gives you a sense of what this thing is. And so I agree. Maybe we need to go into the whole Sky and BT sharing rights. Maybe some games on SABC, not all of them. But you need to give people something, you know. And SABC has a digital platform, so maybe they'd be able to carry more games. And maybe put some money into the pot or something. But yeah, this and it also comes down to the conversation we had earlier on. Cricket split between the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots want to play the game. They find it expensive. They find it out of their reach, away from them. And in a country that's wanting to grow the game, in a world where the IC wants to grow the game, that's not how you want South Africa to be. Whereas the haves who've been here, who've held cricket traditionally, are continuing to grow their base in cricket, largely because of their ability to be able to access the game readily and easily, largely because the game is in their suburban areas and the game's not in their township areas, and they can switch on a TV and go to SuperSport 2. Whereas with me, for the large part of my life, I only got DSTV when I started working, and that was when I was 23. Outside of that, I was just an SABC man like everybody else. And that's how I followed the game. If South Africa were playing overseas, I'd have to try and configure out a way. BBC was so great because we weren't geo-blocked in. Nobody knew how to geo-block. So I could listen. I never watched. Like a lot of stuff, like when South Africa won in 2008, I woke up in the morning to find out what happened. But largely it was me either being at school because they had DSTV there, or even at varsity, or not. If it was during the holidays, I'd be listening. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. listening to ABC radio giving me the coverage. So the whole Ntini Graham Smith thing was me in bed listening to the thing, because I can't switch on TV and watch cricket. And I'm picturing this bulk of a man walking down, padded up, head to toe, and this game being narrated to me. And that's how I followed the game, because it was inaccessible. And it still is. And that's largely where this whole SJN things, because when black people walk into these changing rooms are white. It's a white space. And you need to accommodate, which is why for me, it would have gone a longer way. And maybe this is a missed opportunity for Graham and Jacques at the time, was in picking Mark Boucher, it was returning cricket to what everybody knew it was. In picking Enoch, it was moving cricket into the future. Not saying Mark isn't moving, he's moving the team into the future, but with the way in which the whole Black Lives Matter thing was handled, you kind of felt like if there was a black head coach, it would have gone a longer way to bringing a lot more people into the game, especially with the way in which Boucher is such a polarizing issue. So for me, that's where I hope this new tournament can bridge. It needs to be a bridge. We need bridges. We don't need bridges burnt. So this tournament needs to be a bridge for SABC and SuperSport in terms of their working relationship, for white South Africa and black South Africa to come in together and support a tournament. But the only way that can happen is if this game is accessible to everyone. MSL, and we look at what happened in Paul, MSL was a great example of getting a community involved in the game because of what it was. And all the other franchises needed to do the same. Some of them didn't do it well, some of them did it well, but you needed to do that. I just want the packed bull ring of people of many colors, but a place where it's accessible to everybody. So yeah, I think we've had our fair share of discussions. There's still a lot more to discuss. We'll be back soon. We're still probably going to be taking a bit of a break, but we might be doing some interviews. We have some interviews lined up in the next coming weeks as we lead up to the India T20s, as well as the England Test series in late July, early October. But Tim, thank you very much for joining us, for joining the pod, as always, as the co-host. And yeah, for myself and Tim, goodbye, and le sale kakahiso.